In the depths of the ocean, there are moments when silence is louder than any explosion, and a single look through the periscope decides the fate of an entire hunt. The name of Richard O'Kane was whispered in enemy ports like a spell that sailors feared to speak. He saw in the darkness what others could not, sensed the movement of convoys through barely perceptible signs, and once faced the failure of his own weapon, so rare that many preferred not to mention it. Why did his crew agree to go where common sense told them to retreat? What secret methods allowed him to set records where others hesitated? Which split-second decision became the start of both his greatest triumph and his personal downfall? Ahead lie hidden pages, interrogations with no right answers, controversial episodes that are still too sensitive for official textbooks, and confessions spoken so quietly they were almost lost. Watch until the end, because only there are the keys to his legend. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. You are not here by accident. Richard Hetherington O'Kane was born on February 2, 1911, in Dover, New Hampshire, at a time when America still looked at the ocean more as a frontier than a battlefield. His childhood reflected a growing naval spirit of the nation, inspired by stories of heroes like John Paul Jones and David Farragut. From an early age, O'Kane showed persistence and methodical thinking, tackling problems until he fully understood their workings. His curiosity and affinity for mechanical systems hinted at a future where precision and innovation would prove vital. Determined to pursue a naval career, he entered the United States Naval Academy. Annapolis quickly replaced romantic notions with demanding studies in seamanship, engineering, and leadership. O'Kane excelled, absorbing knowledge with the seriousness of someone who knew it could one day be tested in life or death situations. His quiet confidence and sense of duty made him stand out among his peers. Graduating in 1934, Ensign O'Kane began his career on surface ships, as was tradition. Yet the submarine force, viewed then as a challenging and unconventional path, soon captured his interest. Transitioning from surface to underwater command required a different mindset, mastery of stealth and surprise, rather than overt strength. His early submarine assignments confirmed his talent. Complex torpedo solutions, precise dive calculations, and three-dimensional navigation matched his natural skills. More importantly, submarine warfare rewarded his innovative thinking and ability to see tactical opportunities others overlooked. The USS Wahoo cut through Pacific waters in early 1943, carrying a crew that would soon change submarine warfare. O'Kane served as executive officer under Dudley Morton, forming a partnership that became legendary. Morton brought charisma and daring. O'Kane added precision and planning. Together, they created tactics the enemy never expected. Their most daring moves came during Wahoo's third patrol in the Yellow Sea, a zone other commanders considered suicide. Instead of waiting submerged, Morton and O'Kane surfaced in daylight, firing torpedoes and even the deck gun in full view of the enemy. Escorts scrambled in confusion, unable to counter an attack that broke every rule of underwater warfare. For O'Kane, these patrols were a masterclass. He learned that boldness backed by planning could multiply results, that crew confidence grew from victory, and that innovation often meant discarding tradition. He also saw the price: weeks of confinement, constant tension, and the mental strain of hunting and being hunted. When Wahoo returned from these missions, O'Kane carried more than experience. He had a vision of how submarine warfare could be transformed and knew the day was coming when he would test his own command and prove that aggression and discipline could coexist in the depths of the Pacific. The submarine warfare that O'Kane inherited from his predecessors relied heavily on cautious approaches and patient waiting. Traditional commanders positioned their boats along known shipping routes, submerged to periscope depth, and waited for targets to wander within range. This methodical approach achieved results, but O'Kane recognized that it also surrendered the initiative to enemy forces and limited the psychological impact that aggressive submarine operations could achieve. O'Kane's tactical philosophy began with a fundamental rejection of purely defensive thinking. He studied Japanese convoy operations with the intensity of a chess master analyzing opponent strategies, looking for patterns and weaknesses that conventional wisdom might overlook. His analysis revealed that Japanese escorts expected submarine attacks from predetermined angles and at specific ranges, creating opportunities for commanders willing to approach from unexpected directions. The cornerstone of O'Kane's tactical innovation involved surface attacks conducted during daylight hours. This approach violated virtually every principle of submarine warfare taught at the Naval Academy. But O'Kane recognized that its very audacity made it effective. Japanese lookouts and escort commanders, trained to expect submarine attacks during night hours from submerged positions, often failed to recognize the threat until O'Kane's torpedoes were already in the water. His torpedo firing techniques represented another significant departure from standard practice. While traditional submarine commanders typically fired single torpedoes or small spreads to conserve ammunition, O'Kane developed methods for launching multiple torpedoes in rapid succession, creating overlapping fields of destruction that made successful evasion nearly impossible. These tactics required precise calculations and split-second timing, but they dramatically increased the probability of successful attacks. O'Kane's approach to crew management reflected his understanding that submarine warfare success depended as much on human factors as tactical brilliance. He instituted training programs that cross-trained crew members in multiple specialties, ensuring that critical operations could continue even if key personnel were incapacitated. He also emphasized the importance of detailed planning, conducting exhaustive briefings before every patrol and ensuring that every crew member understood not just their specific role, but how their actions contributed to overall mission success. The command style that emerged from these principles emphasized delegation balanced with personal involvement. O'Kane trusted his officers and senior enlisted men to execute their responsibilities without micromanagement, but he also positioned himself where he could observe critical operations and intervene when necessary. This balance between trust and oversight created an atmosphere where crew members felt empowered to take initiative while understanding that their commander remained fully engaged with every aspect of their operations. His innovation extended to technical modifications that enhanced his submarine's combat effectiveness. O'Kane worked closely with torpedo specialists to modify firing solutions and improve reliability. He experimented with different approach angles and attack patterns, constantly refining techniques based on combat experience and changing enemy defensive measures. These improvements, while sometimes appearing minor in isolation, combined to create significant advantages in actual combat situations. Perhaps most importantly, O'Kane developed methods for maintaining crew morale and effectiveness during extended combat operations. He understood that aggressive tactics placed unusual psychological stresses on submarine crews, and he implemented procedures designed to help his men cope with the emotional demands of repeated combat. These included rotation of critical duties, regular briefings that kept everyone informed of operational progress, and celebration of successful operations that reinforced crew confidence and cohesion. The tactical legacy that O'Kane created extended far beyond his personal achievements. His methods influenced a generation of submarine commanders and contributed to the development of doctrine that guided American submarine operations throughout the remainder of World War II and beyond. More than mere tactical innovations, his approach represented a fundamental shift in thinking about the role of submarines in naval warfare, from auxiliary weapons to primary instruments of maritime dominance. In October 1943, Lieutenant Commander Richard O'Kane assumed command of USS Tang, a brand-new Balao-class submarine that would become synonymous with submarine warfare excellence. The moment represented more than a simple change of command. It marked the beginning of a partnership between man and machine that would redefine what American submarines could accomplish in the Pacific theater. Tang represented the cutting edge of submarine technology, incorporating lessons learned from earlier wartime operations and modifications suggested by experienced commanders like O'Kane. Her hull stretched 311 feet and displaced over 1,500 tons submerged, making her both larger and more capable than earlier submarine designs. Advanced sonar equipment, improved torpedo rooms, and enhanced living spaces reflected the Navy's commitment to giving submarine commanders the tools necessary for extended Pacific operations. O'Kane approached his new command with the methodical preparation that had characterized his entire career. Rather than simply accepting Tang as delivered, he worked closely with shipyard personnel and his new crew to implement modifications based on his combat experience aboard Wahoo. These changes ranged from minor adjustments to equipment placement to major alterations in torpedo loading procedures, each designed to enhance combat effectiveness and crew safety. The process of building crew cohesion aboard Tang required careful attention to both technical proficiency and psychological preparation. O'Kane selected officers and senior enlisted personnel based not just on their individual qualifications, but on their ability to work effectively as team members under extreme stress. He instituted training programs that went beyond standard submarine procedures, incorporating lessons learned from actual combat operations and emphasizing the importance of split-second decision-making under fire. Tang's first patrol departed from Pearl Harbor in January 1944, with O'Kane and his crew eager to test their preparation against real enemy forces. The patrol area assigned to Tang covered waters near the Caroline and Mariana Islands, regions where Japanese shipping remained active despite increasing American submarine presence. O'Kane's reputation preceded him, and both his crew and higher command authorities anticipated exceptional results. The initial weeks of the patrol validated O'Kane's tactical theories and demonstrated Tang's potential as a combat platform. Using the aggressive surface attack methods he had pioneered aboard Wahoo, O'Kane guided Tang into positions where conventional submarine doctrine suggested danger exceeded potential rewards. His willingness to engage targets during daylight hours and at closer ranges than traditional practice recommended created opportunities that more cautious commanders might have missed. Tang's first major engagement occurred when O'Kane positioned his submarine to intercept a heavily escorted Japanese convoy. Rather than attempting the traditional single attack, followed by immediate evasion, O'Kane kept Tang on the surface and engaged multiple targets in rapid succession. The audacity of this approach confused Japanese escorts and allowed Tang to inflict damage far exceeding what a single submarine might normally achieve. The success of Tang's first patrol established patterns that would characterize O'Kane's entire command tenure. His tactical innovations proved their worth in actual combat. His crew demonstrated the kind of cohesion necessary for sustained operations, and Tang herself proved capable of withstanding the stresses associated with aggressive submarine warfare. More importantly, the patrol demonstrated that O'Kane's vision of submarine warfare could be successfully implemented by properly trained crews operating appropriate equipment. Word of Tang's success spread quickly through the submarine force, creating a reputation that would influence both American and Japanese naval operations. American submarine commanders studied O'Kane's tactics and began implementing similar approaches in their own patrol areas. Japanese naval authorities, meanwhile, struggled to develop countermeasures for submarine operations that seemed to violate every known principle of underwater warfare. Tang's Second Patrol, launched in March 1944, transformed O'Kane from a promising submarine commander into a legend whose name was whispered in both American and Japanese naval circles. The patrol area included waters off the Japanese home islands, a region where enemy shipping concentrated and defensive measures reached their peak intensity. O'Kane approached this challenge with characteristic confidence, viewing the increased danger as an opportunity to inflict maximum damage on Japanese maritime operations. The tactical situation that O'Kane encountered during this patrol reflected the evolving nature of Pacific submarine warfare. Japanese convoy operations had become more sophisticated, incorporating lessons learned from earlier American submarine successes. Escort vessels employed improved sonar equipment and coordinated defensive tactics, while merchant vessels followed more unpredictable routing patterns designed to complicate submarine attack planning. O'Kane's response to these challenges demonstrated the innovative thinking that set him apart from his peers. Rather than adapting his tactics to counter specific Japanese defensive measures, he developed entirely new approaches that made enemy countermeasures irrelevant. His willingness to attack from positions where Japanese commanders least expected submarine presence allowed Tang to achieve surprise even against heavily defended targets. The patrol's most significant engagement occurred when Tang encountered a large Japanese convoy consisting of multiple cargo vessels escorted by destroyers and patrol craft. Conventional submarine doctrine would have recommended a single attack against the most valuable target, followed by immediate evasion to avoid retaliation. O'Kane instead positioned Tang for multiple attacks, using the confusion created by his initial torpedo salvo to maneuver for additional firing positions. The results exceeded even O'Kane's expectations. Tang's torpedoes found their targets with devastating accuracy, sending multiple Japanese vessels to the bottom in rapid succession. The psychological impact on surviving Japanese crews proved as valuable as the material damage, creating reports of submarine operations that seemed almost supernatural in their effectiveness. Enemy commanders struggled to explain how a single American submarine could inflict such extensive damage against supposedly well-defended convoys. O'Kane's third patrol pushed Tang's capabilities to their absolute limits and established records that would stand for decades. Operating in waters near Formosa and the Chinese coast, O'Kane encountered target-rich environments that offered unprecedented opportunities for aggressive commanders willing to accept corresponding risks. His tactical innovations had by this point evolved into a coherent system that maximized Tang's offensive potential while minimizing exposure to enemy countermeasures. The mathematical precision of O'Kane's approach became evident during engagements where Tang fired multiple torpedo spreads with mechanical accuracy. His torpedo firing solutions incorporated variables that less experienced commanders might overlook, including target speed changes, escort vessel positions, and environmental factors that could affect torpedo performance. This attention to detail translated directly into improved hit percentages and mission success rates. Tang's achievements under O'Kane's command established her as the most successful American submarine of World War II. But the raw numbers only hint at the tactical revolution that O'Kane implemented. His methods influenced submarine operations throughout the Pacific, as other commanders adopted modified versions of his aggressive approach and achieved their own notable successes. The psychological impact on Japanese naval operations proved equally significant, forcing enemy commanders to divert resources toward defensive measures that reduced their ability to conduct offensive operations. The recognition that O'Kane received from both American and Japanese sources reflected his impact on Pacific submarine warfare. American naval authorities studied Tang's patrol reports with intense interest, looking for tactical innovations that could be incorporated into fleet-wide doctrine. Japanese intelligence services, meanwhile, developed specific countermeasures designed to neutralize the threat posed by O'Kane's unconventional methods, a recognition of his effectiveness that carried its own professional satisfaction. By the end of Tang's fourth patrol, O'Kane had established himself as the premier American submarine commander in the Pacific. His tactical innovations had proven their worth in repeated combat engagements. His crew had developed into one of the most effective submarine teams in the Navy, and Tang herself had become synonymous with submarine warfare excellence. The stage was set for operations that would either crown O'Kane's career with unprecedented success or test his skills against challenges that even his innovative approach might not overcome. September 24th, 1944 marked the beginning of Tang's fifth war patrol, an operation that would culminate in both the greatest triumph and most devastating tragedy in O'Kane's career. The patrol orders directed Tang toward waters near Formosa, a region where Japanese shipping had concentrated as American forces advanced across the Pacific. O'Kane approached this mission with confidence born from previous successes, but also with awareness that each patrol pushed Tang and her crew closer to the statistical limits of submarine survival. The initial weeks of the patrol proceeded according to patterns established during Tang's previous operations. O'Kane positioned his submarine along major shipping routes and waited for opportunities to implement the aggressive tactics that had brought him fame throughout the submarine force. His crew operated with the smooth efficiency that comes from repeated exposure to combat conditions, and Tang herself responded to commands with the reliability that O'Kane had come to expect from his thoroughly tested vessel. The first major engagement of the patrol occurred when Tang encountered a Japanese convoy consisting of cargo vessels and tankers, escorted by destroyers and patrol craft. O'Kane's attack followed his established pattern of aggressive surface operations, bringing Tang close enough to enemy vessels to ensure accurate torpedo fire while maintaining sufficient maneuverability to avoid defensive counterattacks. The results matched expectations, with multiple Japanese vessels succumbing to Tang's precisely aimed torpedoes. October brought opportunities that exceeded even O'Kane's ambitious expectations. Intelligence reports indicated that Japanese shipping in Tang's patrol area had increased significantly, offering target-rich environments for commanders bold enough to exploit them. O'Kane responded by intensifying Tang's operations, conducting multiple attacks within short time periods, and pushing both his submarine and crew to their operational limits. The engagement that would ultimately determine Tang's fate began during the early hours of October 24th, when O'Kane detected a large Japanese convoy moving through the Formosa Strait. The convoy consisted of multiple cargo vessels and tankers, representing exactly the kind of high-value target that justified the risks associated with Tang's aggressive tactics. O'Kane began his approach with the methodical precision that had characterized his most successful operations. The attack that followed sent an unprecedented 13 enemy ships to the bottom, establishing a single patrol record that would never be equaled. O'Kane's tactical brilliance reached its peak as Tang maneuvered through the convoy formation, firing torpedoes with mechanical precision and evading defensive fire through superior seamanship and tactical innovation. The crew performed with the kind of coordinated efficiency that represents the highest achievement in submarine warfare. The tragedy that followed occurred when Tang's final torpedo malfunctioned, surfacing and curving to the left in a circular run heading straight for Tang. The submarine attempted to avoid the rogue torpedo, but 20 seconds later, it struck Tang's torpedo room. sinking the vessel in 180 feet of water. The moment of impact represented a convergence of circumstances that no amount of tactical brilliance could have prevented. The torpedo malfunction that caused the circular run resulted from technical factors beyond O'Kane's control, while Tang's position during the final attack left insufficient maneuvering room to avoid the returning projectile. In seconds, the most successful American submarine of World War II transformed from hunter to victim, taking 78 crew members to their deaths in the crushing depths of the Pacific. 9 survivors, including O'Kane, escaped using Momsen lungs, marking the only known successful use of this escape equipment from a sunken submarine during World War II. The escape itself required remarkable courage and technical skill, as the survivors had to exit Tang's submerged hull and ascend nearly 200 feet while breathing compressed air from primitive escape devices. O'Kane's leadership during these critical moments demonstrated the same calm competence that had characterized his command throughout Tang's combat operations. The irony of Tang's loss was not lost on those who understood submarine warfare. The vessel that had achieved unparalleled success through aggressive tactics and tactical innovation ultimately fell victim to the mechanical failure of her own weapon system. O'Kane's brilliant career as a submarine commander ended not through enemy action or tactical error, but through the kind of equipment malfunction that represents an ever-present hazard in complex military operations. The Japanese frigate that rescued Tang's survivors represented the beginning of an ordeal that would test O'Kane's character in ways that submarine warfare had never demanded. The Japanese regarded American submarine attacks on civilian ships as war crimes, making O'Kane and his fellow survivors special prisoners subject to treatment that exceeded the brutality typically experienced by prisoners of war. The initial interrogation sessions revealed the extent to which O'Kane's reputation had penetrated Japanese naval intelligence. His captors possessed detailed knowledge of Tang's operations and demonstrated particular interest in the tactical innovations that had made O'Kane's submarine so devastatingly effective. The questions posed during these sessions indicated that Japanese naval authorities viewed O'Kane as more than just another captured submarine commander, recognizing him as the architect of tactical methods that had inflicted significant damage on Japanese maritime operations. O'Kane's response to captivity reflected the same methodical approach that had characterized his submarine command. He provided only the information required by international law, while carefully observing his captors and fellow prisoners for intelligence that might prove useful should escape opportunities arise. His behavior during interrogations demonstrated the kind of leadership that had earned respect from Tang's crew, maintaining dignity under circumstances designed to break prisoner morale and extract valuable military information. The Ofuna prison camp, where O'Kane and his fellow Tang survivors were confined, operated according to principles that deliberately violated international conventions governing prisoner treatment. The facility housed captured airmen and submarine crews, whom the Japanese considered war criminals, subjecting them to psychological and physical abuse designed to extract information and punish them for their wartime activities. The camp's location near Yokosuka placed prisoners within sight and sound of Japanese naval operations, a constant reminder of their vulnerable position. Living conditions at Ofuna tested the physical and psychological endurance of every prisoner. Food rations barely maintained survival, medical care was virtually non-existent, and the camp's isolation prevented contact with other Allied prisoners or outside authorities. The guards employed techniques specifically designed to break prisoner morale, including arbitrary punishments, psychological manipulation, and constant threats of execution for perceived violations of camp regulations. O'Kane's response to these conditions revealed character traits that submarine warfare had developed but not fully tested. His ability to maintain mental discipline under extreme stress proved as valuable in captivity as it had been during combat operations. He established routines that helped maintain physical fitness and psychological stability, while carefully observing camp operations for weaknesses that might be exploited by escape attempts or future Allied intelligence operations. The relationships that O'Kane developed with fellow prisoners reflected his understanding of group dynamics and leadership principles. He worked to maintain morale among Tang's survivors while building connections with prisoners from other military units and services. These relationships provided mutual support systems that helped prisoners endure their captivity while gathering intelligence about Japanese operations that might prove valuable after the war ended. O'Kane's behavior during captivity also demonstrated his commitment to the military principles that had guided his submarine command. He maintained military discipline among Tang's survivors, ensured that classified information remained protected, and continued to accept responsibility for the welfare of men who had served under his command. This consistency between his wartime leadership and prisoner behavior reflected character traits that transcended specific circumstances or environmental pressures. The psychological challenges of captivity proved as demanding as the physical hardships. O'Kane faced the knowledge that Tang's loss had ended his submarine career at its peak, that his innovative tactics would be implemented by other commanders, and that the war would continue without his participation. The mental discipline required to process these realities while maintaining hope for survival and eventual liberation tested aspects of his character that combat operations had never fully explored. The months of captivity also provided O'Kane with opportunities to reflect on his wartime service and consider the broader implications of submarine warfare in the Pacific. The enforced inactivity allowed him to analyze his tactical innovations from a detached perspective, evaluating their long-term impact on naval warfare and considering modifications that might improve their effectiveness. These reflections would later influence his post-war contributions to submarine doctrine and training programs. Liberation came to Ofuna prison camp in August 1945, as American forces occupied Japan and assumed responsibility for prisoner repatriation. For O'Kane and his fellow Tang survivors, freedom represented not just escape from captivity, but reunion with a nation that had transformed dramatically during their imprisonment. The war that had defined their lives had ended, and the heroes who had shaped its outcome faced the challenge of adapting to peacetime realities. The initial weeks following liberation involved extensive debriefing sessions where O'Kane provided detailed accounts of Tang's final patrol, his captivity experiences, and observations about Japanese naval operations. These sessions served multiple purposes, gathering intelligence that might influence future military planning, while ensuring that O'Kane's tactical innovations were properly documented for incorporation into submarine warfare doctrine. The information he provided helped fill gaps in the historical record while contributing to the Navy's understanding of submarine warfare effectiveness. The Medal of Honor that O'Kane received for his final war patrol represented recognition not just of his personal courage, but of the tactical innovations that had revolutionized American submarine warfare. The citation accompanying the award detailed Tang's achievements during her final patrol, noting the unprecedented number of enemy vessels destroyed and the leadership O'Kane displayed during the submarine's final moments. The medal represented the highest recognition that American military authorities could bestow, acknowledging O'Kane's status among the most effective combat commanders in naval history. The public reception that greeted O'Kane's return reflected America's hunger for heroes who embodied the nation's victory in the Pacific. Newspaper accounts of Tang's achievements and O'Kane's survival created a narrative that captured public imagination and provided tangible evidence of American military superiority over Japanese forces. His story became part of the broader mythology surrounding American submarine operations, contributing to public understanding of the role that submarine warfare had played in achieving Pacific victory. O'Kane's adjustment to post-war reality required significant psychological adaptation. The transition from combat operations to peacetime routine challenged veterans throughout the military, but submarine commanders faced unique difficulties related to the highly specialized nature of their wartime service. O'Kane's expertise in submarine warfare tactics remained valuable to the Navy, but the absence of active combat operations meant that his most refined skills could only be applied to training and doctrine development rather than operational implementation. The reunions with Tang survivors and families of crew members lost during the submarine's final patrol created emotional challenges that formal recognition could not address. O'Kane's sense of responsibility for his crew's welfare had not ended with Tang's sinking, and he worked to maintain contact with survivor families while honoring the memory of those who had died under his command. These relationships provided both satisfaction and ongoing reminders of the human costs associated with his wartime service. Professional recognition from naval authorities opened opportunities for O'Kane to influence submarine warfare development during the early stages of the Cold War. His tactical innovations and combat experience made him a valuable resource for training programs designed to prepare submarine crews for potential future conflicts. The methods he had pioneered in the Pacific required modification for application against different enemies and in different operational environments, but their fundamental principles remained sound. The process of documenting Tang's achievements and O'Kane's tactical contributions involved extensive collaboration with naval historians and intelligence analysts. These efforts ensured that lessons learned during O'Kane's combat service would be preserved for future military leaders while contributing to the official record of American submarine operations during World War II. The documentation process also provided O'Kane with opportunities to reflect on his wartime service from a historical perspective, evaluating his contributions within the broader context of Pacific naval operations. Media attention surrounding O'Kane's story created opportunities for public education about submarine warfare while generating interest in naval service among young Americans. His willingness to participate in interviews and public appearances reflected his understanding of the importance of maintaining public support for naval operations and recognition of the sacrifices made by submarine crews throughout the Pacific War. These activities helped ensure that public memory of submarine warfare achievements remained accurate and appropriately honored the contributions of all submarine personnel. O'Kane's post-war naval career reflected the service's recognition of his expertise and the changing nature of submarine warfare in the nuclear age. His assignments included positions where his combat experience and tactical innovations could contribute to the development of doctrine and training programs designed to prepare the submarine force for potential Cold War conflicts. These roles allowed him to influence submarine warfare development while adapting his wartime experience to peacetime requirements. The transition to nuclear submarine technology presented both opportunities and challenges for officers with O'Kane's background. His tactical expertise remained valuable, but the technical complexities of nuclear propulsion and advanced sonar systems required substantial additional training. O'Kane approached these new technologies with the same methodical attitude that had characterized his wartime service, recognizing that innovation in submarine warfare would continue to require leaders capable of adapting established principles to evolving technical capabilities. His involvement in submarine training programs allowed O'Kane to transmit hard-won combat experience to a new generation of submarine officers. The tactical methods he had pioneered during World War II required modification for application in different operational environments, but their fundamental principles of aggressive action and innovative thinking remained relevant. His teaching emphasized the importance of adapting doctrine to specific circumstances rather than rigidly following predetermined procedures. O'Kane's writing projects during this period included both official contributions to submarine warfare doctrine and popular accounts of Tang's achievements that helped preserve the historical record of Pacific submarine operations. His memoir provided detailed accounts of submarine warfare tactics while honoring the memory of crew members who had served under his command. These writings ensured that future military leaders would have access to first-hand accounts of combat operations and tactical innovations that had proven successful under actual combat conditions. The personal relationships that O'Kane maintained with Tang survivors and other submarine veterans provided ongoing connections to his wartime service while supporting the broader submarine community. Veterans organizations offered forums where combat experiences could be shared and evaluated, contributing to the collective understanding of submarine warfare effectiveness. These relationships also provided mutual support systems that helped veterans process their wartime experiences and adapt to peacetime realities. Retirement from active naval service in 1957 marked the end of O'Kane's formal military career, but not his involvement with submarine warfare development. His expertise remained valuable to naval authorities and defense contractors working on advanced submarine technologies and tactical systems. Consulting opportunities allowed him to contribute to submarine warfare evolution while maintaining connections to the military community that had defined his professional life. The years following retirement provided opportunities for O'Kane to reflect on his contributions to submarine warfare and evaluate their lasting impact on naval operations. The tactical innovations he had pioneered during World War II had influenced submarine doctrine development and contributed to American naval supremacy during the Cold War period. His methods had been studied, modified, and incorporated into training programs that prepared subsequent generations of submarine commanders for their own operational challenges. O'Kane's legacy extended beyond his personal achievements to encompass the broader revolution in submarine warfare that his tactical innovations had helped create. The aggressive surface attack methods he had pioneered influenced submarine operations throughout the remainder of World War II and provided foundation principles for submarine warfare doctrine development during the nuclear age. His emphasis on innovative thinking and adaptation to specific operational circumstances became permanent features of submarine officer training and tactical development. The recognition that O'Kane received during his later years reflected both his personal achievements and his contributions to naval warfare development. Military historians and tactical analysts continued to study his methods and evaluate their relevance to contemporary submarine operations. His story became part of the official record of American naval achievement, while serving as inspiration for officers facing their own operational challenges in different eras and circumstances. The legend that surrounded O'Kane's wartime service generated speculation and stories that extended far beyond documented historical facts. Submarine crews throughout the Pacific spread tales of O'Kane's supposedly supernatural ability to predict enemy movements, his uncanny navigation skills in unmapped waters, and tactical insights that seemed to exceed the capabilities of conventional training and experience. These stories, while exaggerated, reflected the genuine respect that submarine personnel held for O'Kane's achievements and the difficulty of explaining his success through conventional analysis. Intelligence documents declassified decades after the war revealed the extent to which Japanese naval authorities had focused on countering O'Kane's tactical methods. Enemy intelligence services developed specific briefings about Tang's operations and created training programs designed to help convoy escorts recognize and counter the aggressive surface attacks that O'Kane had pioneered. The attention that Japanese forces devoted to neutralizing O'Kane's threat represented recognition of his tactical effectiveness that exceeded official American assessments of his contributions. Speculation about classified operations that O'Kane might have conducted during Tang's patrols reflected the secretive nature of submarine warfare and the incomplete historical record of Pacific operations. Veterans' accounts included references to special missions, intelligence-gathering operations, and coordination with other military units that were not included in official patrol reports. While these stories cannot be verified through available documentation, they suggest that O'Kane's responsibilities may have extended beyond conventional submarine warfare into areas that remain classified. The technical innovations that O'Kane implemented aboard Tang included modifications to torpedo firing systems, sonar equipment, and navigation procedures that were not documented in official maintenance records. Crew members recalled equipment adjustments and procedural changes that enhanced Tang's combat effectiveness, but were not reported through formal channels. These innovations reflected O'Kane's hands-on approach to submarine operations and his willingness to experiment with established procedures when combat experience suggested improvements. Former Tang crew members shared stories about O'Kane's ability to sense enemy presence through subtle changes in ocean conditions, water temperature variations, and barely perceptible sounds that other commanders might overlook. While these accounts may reflect the natural tendency to mythologize exceptional leaders, they also suggest that O'Kane possessed observational skills and intuitive capabilities that contributed to his tactical success. The boundary between exceptional training and natural talent remained unclear even to those who served most closely with him. The psychological profile that Japanese interrogators developed during O'Kane's captivity included assessments of his personality traits, leadership methods, and tactical thinking patterns. These documents, discovered in Japanese military archives after the war, revealed the extent to which enemy analysts had studied O'Kane's methods and attempted to predict his behavior patterns. The Japanese evaluation recognized O'Kane as a uniquely dangerous opponent whose tactical innovations required specific countermeasures and represented a fundamental challenge to conventional submarine warfare doctrine. Stories circulated among submarine veterans about encounters with O'Kane during shore leave periods, describing conversations where he shared tactical insights and operational experiences that were not included in official reports. These informal discussions supposedly revealed aspects of submarine warfare that O'Kane considered too sensitive or controversial for formal documentation. Veterans recalled his emphasis on the psychological dimensions of submarine operations and the importance of understanding enemy psychology as completely as one understood technical systems. The relationship between O'Kane and his contemporaries in the submarine force generated speculation about professional rivalries and tactical disagreements that never appeared in official records. Some accounts suggested that O'Kane's aggressive methods created tension with more conservative commanders who viewed his tactics as unnecessarily risky. These supposed conflicts reflected broader debates within the submarine force about the appropriate balance between aggressive action and crew safety, debates that continued long after the war ended. Rumors persisted about special recognition that O'Kane received from Allied intelligence services for operations that remained classified decades after the war's conclusion. These stories suggested that Tang's patrols included intelligence-gathering missions and special operations that extended beyond conventional submarine warfare into areas requiring the highest security classifications. While unverifiable, these rumors reflected the secretive nature of submarine operations and the likelihood that successful commanders like O'Kane were assigned responsibilities beyond those documented in public records. The medical evaluation that O'Kane underwent following his repatriation included psychological assessments designed to evaluate the impact of combat stress and captivity on his mental health. These evaluations, while confidential, reportedly indicated that O'Kane had maintained remarkable psychological stability throughout his ordeal and showed few signs of the post-traumatic stress that affected many combat veterans. This resilience contributed to speculation about O'Kane's exceptional character traits and the sources of his leadership effectiveness. The influence that O'Kane's tactical innovations exerted on submarine warfare doctrine extended far beyond his personal achievements to reshape fundamental concepts about underwater combat operations. Military academies incorporated case studies of Tang's patrols into their curriculum, using O'Kane's methods to illustrate principles of innovative leadership and tactical adaptation under combat conditions. His approach to aggressive surface attacks became a standard component of submarine warfare training, modified for different operational environments, but preserving the essential elements of surprise and overwhelming firepower. Popular culture embraced O'Kane's story as embodying the heroic narrative that Americans preferred about their World War II experience. Books, magazine articles, and eventually television programs presented Tang's achievements as examples of American technological superiority and individual courage overcoming seemingly impossible odds. These portrayals, while sometimes simplified for popular consumption, helped ensure that public memory of submarine warfare remained positive and that O'Kane's contributions were recognized by civilian audiences. The submarine warfare community established O'Kane's legacy through naming conventions and institutional recognition that honored his contributions to naval operations. Ships, buildings, and training programs bore his name, ensuring that future generations of submarine personnel would encounter his story and study his methods. These tributes served both commemorative and educational purposes, preserving the historical record while inspiring contemporary officers to pursue the same standards of excellence that O'Kane had achieved. International naval authorities studied O'Kane's methods and incorporated modified versions into their own submarine warfare doctrine. Allied naval forces recognized that his tactical innovations represented fundamental advances in underwater combat theory, rather than techniques applicable only to specific circumstances or equipment configurations. The principles of aggressive action, tactical surprise, and adaptive leadership that O'Kane had demonstrated proved relevant across different naval traditions and operational requirements. The academic analysis of O'Kane's career contributed to broader understanding of leadership effectiveness under extreme stress conditions. Business schools and management programs used Tang's operations as case studies in decision-making, team building, and innovation under pressure. These applications extended O'Kane's influence beyond military circles into civilian leadership development, demonstrating the universal relevance of the principles he had implemented during his submarine command. Military historians continued to debate the broader significance of O'Kane's achievements within the context of Pacific submarine warfare and American naval strategy. Some analysts argued that his tactical innovations represented evolutionary development of existing submarine warfare principles, rather than revolutionary changes in doctrine. Others maintained that his methods constituted fundamental departures from traditional practice that influenced naval warfare development for decades after World War II ended. The psychological aspects of O'Kane's leadership attracted attention from researchers studying combat effectiveness and group dynamics under stress conditions. His ability to maintain crew morale and performance during extended combat operations provided insights into leadership methods that proved effective in extreme circumstances. These studies contributed to military leadership training programs and influenced the development of selection criteria for submarine commanders and other specialized combat positions. Contemporary submarine commanders acknowledged O'Kane's continuing influence on their professional development and tactical thinking. His emphasis on innovation, aggressive action, and adaptive leadership remained relevant to officers operating advanced nuclear submarines in modern operational environments. The fundamental principles that guided his wartime service continued to shape submarine warfare doctrine, even as technology and geopolitical circumstances evolved dramatically from his era. The preservation of Tang's historical record required ongoing efforts from naval historians, veterans organizations, and military institutions committed to maintaining accurate accounts of World War II submarine operations. These preservation activities ensured that future researchers would have access to detailed documentation of O'Kane's methods and achievements, contributing to the broader historical understanding of submarine warfare effectiveness and tactical evolution during the Pacific Campaign. Understanding Richard O'Kane's achievements requires looking at the broader picture of Pacific submarine warfare. At the start of the conflict, American doctrine and equipment were unprepared for the realities of the Pacific, forcing rapid adaptation. This environment opened space for bold officers like O'Kane to transform submarine operations through creativity and risk-taking. He was not alone. Dudley Morton, his mentor aboard Wahoo, pioneered many of the aggressive tactics that O'Kane later perfected. Eugene Fluckey of USS Barb brought his own innovations, including coastal raids and special operations. Together, these commanders reshaped what submarines could do. Unlike German U-boat commanders who focused on merchant shipping in the Atlantic, American submariners in the Pacific attacked both military and supply vessels to strangle Japanese logistics. The differences in objectives demanded different tactics and created space for innovation. O'Kane's triumphs were even more remarkable given the flaws of American torpedoes. The Mark 14 model was notorious for failures and even circular runs, one of which ultimately doomed Tang. That he achieved record success despite this proved how leadership and improvisation could overcome equipment flaws. Intelligence also played a role. Code breaking gave American submarines key advantages, but exploiting this information required daring commanders. O'Kane's ability to turn intelligence into devastating results set him apart. The Japanese responded with better escorts and sonar, but his constant adaptation kept Tang effective until the end. The human cost was immense. Life on patrol meant confinement, exhaustion, and constant danger. Many crews never returned, and survivors carried the psychological burden home. O'Kane's leadership, balancing aggression with care for morale, showed he understood the human side of submarine warfare. Strategically, submarines were one part of the broader Pacific Campaign alongside carriers, amphibious assaults, and bombing raids. Yet their impact was disproportionate. Statistical reviews after the war showed that a small group of aggressive commanders like O'Kane accounted for much of the damage inflicted on Japanese shipping. The lessons shaped the Navy for decades. Training programs, doctrines, and even submarine design incorporated innovations drawn from Tang's patrols. Culturally, the public remembered submarine crews as elite warriors, and O'Kane's story became a symbol of daring and sacrifice. Internationally, his methods influenced navies worldwide, proving that submarines could be strategic weapons rather than supporting arms. Modern commanders still study his patrols, applying his principles of aggression and adaptability to nuclear submarines in a very different era. O'Kane's legacy is more than victories at sea. His career shows how leadership, innovation, and courage under pressure can change history. His name became a benchmark not only for submarine officers, but for anyone facing extreme challenges. The memory of Tang and her lost crew remains a solemn reminder of the price of such excellence. In the crushing depths of the Pacific, Richard O'Kane proved that determination and intelligence could defeat impossible odds. His legacy still sails with every submarine that slips beneath the waves, carrying forward the spirit of the ghost hunter of the Pacific.